You won't believe what happened in a small town when a humble teenager decided to confront the formidable leader of a local biker gang. One moment of courage changed his life forever, and now he has become a true legend. Chapter 1. A Quiet Town. The town of Brightville has always been a quiet place where everyone knew each other. Cozy streets, small shops, and friendly neighbors created an atmosphere of tranquility. Every evening, residents gathered in the square, discussing the latest news and sharing stories. However, in recent years, this idyllic landscape has begun to change. The bikers, a group known for their aggressive methods and ruthless behavior, have appeared on the horizon. They took over the local bar, the Green Horse, and since then, life in Brightville has not been so peaceful. The bikers began to set their own rules, intimidating the locals. At first, these were minor threats, but they soon escalated into open conflicts. People began to be afraid to go out after sunset, and evening gatherings on the square turned into silent meetings. There was an atmosphere of fear in Brightville. Chapter 2. The Main Character. Our hero, 17-year-old Max, was an ordinary teenager. He loved playing video games, skateboarding, and spending time with friends. Max always dreamed of adventures, but his life was a routine one school, home, school again. He often watched the events from afar, not wanting to interfere in the affairs of adults. Max grew up in a family where honesty and fairness were valued. His father, a former policeman, always taught his son to be brave and protect the weak. But over the years, Max began to doubt his abilities. He felt small and helpless compared to the formidable bikers. Chapter 3. The Challenge. One day, when Max was walking with friends in the park, they witnessed a conflict between locals and bikers. The gang's leader, named Ray, threatened a local store owner, demanding payment for protection. Max felt anger rising in him. He always hated injustice, but he never thought he could do anything about it. "Why isn't anyone interfering?" he asked his friends. Lena, his best friend, shook her head. "They're afraid. We're all afraid." It sounded like a verdict for Max. He did not want to remain an indifferent spectator. Chapter 4. Courage. That evening, when Ray came back to town, Max gathered all his courage and approached him. "You can't treat people like that," he shouted. Everyone froze, waiting for the biker's reaction. Ray turned around and looked at Max with a grin. "What are you going to do, boy?" he asked. Max felt his heart pounding in his chest, but instead of retreating, he continued, "I won't let you bully people. We are not afraid of you." Ray laughed and said, "Do you think your words matter? I can wipe you off the face of the earth with one move." With that, he turned around and walked away, leaving Max in a state of shock. Chapter 5. Consequences. The next day at school, everyone was discussing what had happened. Max became a local celebrity, but it did not bring him joy. He understood that now the wrath of the bikers could descend on him. His friends supported him, but fear was in the air. Lena approached Max during recess. "Do you really think you've changed anything? What is it?" she asked with concern in her voice. "Maybe you just provoked them even more." Max felt guilty, but a desire to act was already emerging inside him. Chapter 6. Supporting Friends. Despite his fears, Max was not left alone. His best friends, Lena and Jake, decided to support him. They organized a meeting with other teenagers from the city and discussed how to resist bikers. "We have to unite," Lena said. "If we act together, we can show them that we are not afraid." About 20 people gathered at the meeting. Max felt inspired. They began discussing ideas on how to confront bikers without violence. "We can organize protests," Jake suggested. "We have to show them that we are not alone." Chapter 7. Plans. The guys began to develop a plan. They decided to create their own group, the Brightville Youth, which will protect the interests of the townspeople. They began to hold protests against the actions of bikers and attract the attention of local media. The first action was held in the park. The teenagers brought posters with slogans about peace and unity. They opposed violence and intimidation. Local residents began to join them, and soon their number increased to several dozen people. Chapter 8. The first action. About 100 people attended the first action. The atmosphere was tense. People were discussing the chances of both sides. Max performed in front of the crowd, his voice sounding confident. "We are not here to fight. We are here to show that we are united." The crowd supported his cries. However, the bikers couldn't ignore it. Soon Ray gathered his people and came to the rally. "Do you think you can just stand up to us like that?" he shouted at the crowd. "I'll show you who's in charge here." Max felt the fear coming over him again, but he knew he couldn't back down. He came forward and said, "We are not afraid of you. We will fight for our city." Chapter 9. The Bikers' Response. After this action, Ray was furious at the defeat. He couldn't let the teenagers defeat him. Instead of retaliating immediately, he decided to step back and reflect on his actions. The situation has escalated to the limit. Bikers began to arrange minor dirty tricks. They damaged the cars of local residents and left threats on the walls of buildings. People started to panic. Some were even going to leave the city. Max understood that the situation required decisive action. He gathered his friends and proposed the idea of creating a protective group, the Brightville Guards. Their task would be to patrol the streets of the city in the evenings and protect local residents from threats. Chapter 10. Preparing for Defense. Max and his team began preparing for the patrols. They assigned roles. Someone was responsible for security on the street. Someone was involved in organizing events to attract new members to the group. Lena suggested creating a website for the Brightville Guardians, where news could be shared and people could be encouraged to join their cause. Jake took responsibility for security and began learning the basics of self-defense. Chapter 11. The First Night of the Patrol. The first night of the patrol arrived. Max, Lena, and Jake took to the streets of the city with flashlights and posters with slogans about peace and security. They patrolled the surroundings of the park and the local store. Suddenly, they noticed a group of bikers at the Green Horse Bar. Max's heart started beating faster. He knew this was their chance to show their strength. Chapter 12. The Clash. As they got closer to the bar, they heard the loud laughter of the bikers and saw them intimidating the local store owner. Max gathered his strength and approached them with his friends. "You can't treat people like that anymore," he shouted confidently. The bikers stopped and looked at them in disbelief. Ray came forward. "What are you doing here? It's none of your business." Max felt a surge of courage. "This is our business. We will defend our city." Chapter 13. Conflict. The situation has escalated to the limit. Ray started threatening the teenagers, but instead of giving up or starting a fight, Max offered to arrange a motorcycle race. "If you win, we will get out of your way. If we win, you will leave Brightville," he suggested. The bikers exchanged glances and agreed to the challenge with grins on their faces. They were confident of their victory. Chapter 14. Preparing for the race. Max understood that they needed to prepare for the race, so they started training every day. Jake was an excellent mechanic and helped them improve their skateboards and bicycles. Every evening they gathered in Jake's garage and worked on their riding technique and the speed of their vehicles. Lena organized the race and attracted the attention of local residents to this event. But in addition to physical training, they needed a strategy. They studied the turns on the race route and tried to anticipate possible tricks of bikers. Chapter 15. Race Day. Race Day has arrived. The whole city gathered to watch the spectacle. The atmosphere was tense. People were discussing the chances of both sides. Max felt the pressure. This was his last opportunity to prove to everyone that they could stand up to the bikers. Before the start of the race, Ray approached Max. Do you realize that if you lose, then all your attempts will be in vain? Max replied confidently, I am ready to risk everything for the sake of my city. Chapter 16. The race begins. The start signal has sounded, and the race has begun. Max raced forward with his friends, feeling the wind in his hair and adrenaline in his blood. The bikers were fast and aggressive. They tried to cut them off at every turn. But Max was focused. He knew every street in Brightville like the back of his hand. At one of the turns, one of the bikers tried to cut him off, but he dodged and was ahead of everyone. The crowd burst into applause. It seemed like the whole city was supporting him. Chapter 17. Twists of Fate. The finish line was approaching, and Max knew that this was his chance. He put all his strength into the last dash and crossed the finish line first. The crowd exploded with cheers. They did it. Ray was furious at the defeat. He couldn't believe his eyes. But instead of taking revenge right away, he decided to step back and think about his actions. Chapter 18. A New Life. After the race, life in Brightville began to change for the better. People began to unite around the idea of supporting each other and fighting injustice. Max has become a symbol of hope for many residents. Every day, the number of Brightville Guardians members grew. They organized events for young people and helped children from disadvantaged families find their voices. However, Max had new concerns. He understood the importance of constantly working on community unity to prevent the return of the biker threat. Chapter 19. Life Lessons. A few months after the race, Ray disappeared from Brightville. Rumors circulated that he had moved to a nearby town after his defeat. This gave the residents hope for a peaceful existence. Max continued to work on projects to improve the city. He organized volunteer projects to improve local parks and help children from disadvantaged families find their voices. Nevertheless, he felt anxious. Even though Ray was gone, many residents were still afraid to go outside after sunset. Chapter 20. The Return of Ray. However, it soon became known about Ray's return to the city. Rumors circulated that he was going to return with new allies from other cities. This caused panic among Brightville residents. Many feared a repeat of past events. Max understood the need to prepare for possible conflicts. He gathered his friends to discuss a plan of action in case Ray returned. Chapter 21. Joining Forces. At the meeting, the guys decided to join forces with all the youth groups from neighboring cities. They began to actively communicate through social networks and organize joint events to raise awareness of bullying issues. Lena suggested the idea of holding a big peace festival. This could attract media attention and help unite young people from different cities against violence. Max supported this initiative. He understood the importance of creating a positive image for his city. Chapter 22. Peace Festival. The festival was a success. Many people from all over the region came to it. Various events were organized, concerts by local bands, exhibitions by artists, and self-defense workshops. Max spoke to the crowd. We are not here just for ourselves. We are here for the future of our children. We must show everyone that we are united. The crowd supported his words. The energy of the celebration was in the air. However, even during the holiday, Max had doubts. He was aware of Ray's possible return and understood the need to be prepared for any eventuality. Chapter 23. The conflict is brewing again. But soon after the festival, reports began to arrive that Ray was gathering his gang for a new attack on Brightville. People began to panic. Some even offered to leave the city for good. Max understood the importance of unity. He gathered his friends to discuss a plan of action in case Ray returned. They decided to organize additional patrols in the evenings and conduct self-defense training for everyone who wants to join the Brightville Guards. Lena organized meetings with representatives of the local police to get support. She knew that without the help of adults, it would be difficult for them to cope with the threat. Chapter 24. Preparing for Defense. The guys began to prepare for a possible conflict. They organized additional patrols in the evenings and conducted self-defense training for everyone who wanted to join the Brightville Guards. Lena organized meetings with representatives of the local police to get support. She knew that without the help of adults, it would be difficult for them to cope with the threat. Soon, they gathered enough participants to create a real city defense team. Everyone was ready to stand up for their rights. Chapter 25. The Clash. Finally, the day of the clash came. Ray and his gang came to the Green Horse Bar, where locals were gathering to discuss the situation. Max gathered his friends and approached them. "We will no longer tolerate your threats. Get out of our city." Ray laughed. "Do you really think you can stop us? We'll be back." The situation escalated to the limit. People began to gather around them in anticipation of the outcome of the conflict. Chapter 26. The Crucial Moment. At that moment, the crowd behind Max began to rise. People began to support his words about peace and unity. Ray saw this and realized that the situation was getting out of control. "Go away," Max shouted once more with determination in his voice. The bikers looked at each other. They understood that the situation was getting out of control. Suddenly, one of the bikers tried to throw a bottle towards the crowd. This caused panic among the people. But Max reacted quickly. "Don't let them scare you. We are stronger together." Chapter 27. Overcoming Fear. Max's words had an effect. People started shouting in response to the bikers' threats. Ray was stunned by such resistance. He had never expected to see such unity among the Brightville residents. In the end, Ray decided to retreat. He left with his gang amid the muffled shouts of the crowd. It was a victory for the people of Brightville. Max felt a surge of joy. He understood the importance of the unity of his people. Now they knew that together they could overcome any difficulties. Chapter 28. New Horizons. A few weeks after the collision, life in Brightville began to recover. People began to take to the streets again without fear of being intimidated by bikers. Max continued to work on projects to improve the city. He organized events for young people and helped other people find their voices. However, he had new concerns. He understood the importance of constantly working on community unity to prevent the return of the biker threat. Chapter 29. Life Lessons. Now Max understands the importance of courage and unity. He has learned that even one person can change the world around them if they have the support of friends and the desire to fight for justice. Max's story became an example for many young people. They understood the importance of fighting for their rights and the need to unite against injustice. Now, every evening, young people gathered in Brightville Square to discuss plans to improve life in the city. They shared their ideas on how to make their homes safer for everyone. Chapter 30. New Challenges. But soon after that, new challenges began. Residents began to notice strange things. The disappearance of animals from yards and mysterious noises at night became commonplace. Max began to worry that it might be related to the return of Ray or his people. He gathered his friends to discuss the situation. "We have to find out the truth," Jake said with determination in his voice. Lena agreed. "Even if it's just a rumor, we need to be prepared for anything." Chapter 31. Investigation. The guys started their own investigation. They interviewed the neighbors about what had been happening in recent weeks. Many people talked about strange cars at night near the forest outside the city. "It could be related to bikers," Lena suggested during one of the team's meetings. "We need to check this place." They decided to go there at night, armed with flashlights and cameras to record everything that happens. Chapter 32. The night of the investigation. Night fell quickly. The group gathered at the edge of the forest with a sense of unease within them. Each of them understood the risk of this venture. but the desire to find out the truth was stronger than fear. They slowly made their way through the trees. The sounds of night nature surrounded them from all sides. Suddenly, they heard the sound of engines. It was the bikers. Max whispered to his friends, "Hide!" They hid behind the trees and watched those events. Chapter 33. The Secret Plan. The bikers gathered around the campfire. Ray was among them. He talked about plans to regain control of Brightville with the help of new allies from neighboring towns. "We have to show these brats our strength," he shouted to his men. "No one should stop us from doing what we want." Max realized the importance of this information. It was proof that the threat still existed. Chapter 34. Homecoming. After watching the bikers talk, the guys returned home, determined to act immediately. They knew for sure now Ray had returned with renewed vigor. Max gathered all his friends at his house to discuss an action plan in case the bikers attacked the city again. "We have to prepare," he said seriously. "Now we have information about their plans," Lena added, "and we need to warn the rest of the residents." Chapter 35. Joining Forces. The guys decided to organize a meeting with all the residents of Brightville in order to share the news about Ray's return and his plans to take over the city again. At the meeting, many residents were alarmed by new rumors about bikers. Some even offered to leave the city for good, out of fear of them. But Max spoke in front of the crowd. "We can't just run away. We must unite against this threat." His words inspired many of those present. They understood the importance of unity in the face of danger. Chapter 36. Preparing for Defense. Brightville residents began preparing for a possible biker attack. They created defensive groups from among the youth and adults of the city. Max and his friends organized self-defense training for everyone who wanted to join them. Everyone understood the importance of this moment. Lena was engaged in creating an alert system among residents about any suspicious activity or appearance of bikers in the vicinity of the city. Chapter 37. Waiting for the attack. Several days passed without incident. Residents began to lose patience with the expectation of a biker attack. But Max knew you need to be prepared for anything. One morning, residents noticed strange cars again near the forest outside the city. This made them wary again. "This could be their first attack," Lena shouted during one of the meetings of the city defense team. Max gathered all his friends to observe the situation near the forest. They now knew for sure that the threat was near. Chapter 38. The Last Battle. The night of the offensive has finally arrived. Bikers have arrived in the city with the intention of intimidating the residents of Brightville once and for all. Max gathered all his friends near the city center during the biker attack. They stood shoulder to shoulder with each other, ready to defend their home. Ray came forward with his men. "Do you still think you can stop us? We'll be back." But instead of fear, the residents responded with unity. "We are no longer afraid of you," Max shouted loudly. His words acted as a spark of hope among the people. Chapter 39. The Battle of Brightville. The real battle for Brightville's freedom has begun. People fought for their rights against the aggressors. Everyone knew their role. Someone was protecting the elderly and children from the threat. Max and his friends were trying to push the bikers back to the forest. They used all their self-defense skills to show their strength. Shouts of joy rang out among the crowd as the residents began to gain the upper hand over the attackers. Chapter 40. Victory. Finally, after a long struggle, the residents were able to push the bikers away from their city. Ray was forced to retreat with his men to the loud applause of the crowd. Everyone understood the importance of this moment. Brightville had become a symbol of unity in the face of threat. Max felt a surge of joy. He knew for sure now, together they could overcome any difficulties. Chapter 41. A New Day. The next day, the residents gathered in the square to celebrate their victory. The music was playing merrily, and there were smiles everywhere. Max spoke to the crowd again, speaking about the importance of unity among people. He reminded everyone how important it is to protect your home together. Lena added about the need to continue working on improving life in the city no matter what. Chapter 42, Lessons for Future Generations. Now, every evening, young people gathered in Brightville Square to discuss plans to improve life in the city. They shared their ideas on how to make their homes safer for everyone. Max's story has become an example for many young people. They realize the importance of fighting for their rights and the need to unite against injustice. Brightville has become a symbol of hope among the surrounding towns. People came here to see the power of unity among the residents. Chapter 43. The Future Lies Ahead. Now Max understands the importance of courage and unity. He learned that even one person can change the world around them if they have the support of friends. A new life began for every Brightville resident. And although new challenges awaited them, everyone now knew for sure that together they would be able to overcome any difficulties. This story shows the path from fear to courage and unity in the face of threat. It inspires you to take action and reminds you that even in the most difficult situations, you can find a way to make a difference.